Welcome back to our channel, friends. Today we've got an incredibly intriguing sci-fi adventure. A Canwyn diplomat named Brennarch teams up with humans aboard the starship Albatross to face a terrifying alien threat, the elusive Zurl Raiders. But the real twist? Brennarch's mysterious harness, which humans hilariously mistake for something else, turns out to hold the key to their survival. Trust me, the epic space battle at the climax will have you gripping your seat, cheering for humanity and their newfound allies. Want to find out how Brennarch and his human friend Hannah use this strange bulge to save the galaxy? Make sure you listen all the way through to discover the thrilling finale. If you love exciting sci-fi stories, don't forget to hit subscribe to support the channel and stay updated on our latest adventures. Also, leave a comment below letting us know your favorite part of this story and where you're listening from. Chapter 1. The arrival. Brennarch Zil pressed his snout against the shuttle's window, watching the Earth defense vessel Albatross loom closer. It wasn't Brennarch's first time aboard a human craft, but it was certainly the largest. Hulking thrusters, hull plating scarred by micrometeoroid impacts, and the faint shimmer of a brand-new gravitational stabilizer system gave the ship an air of quiet pride. Humans, he'd heard, were masters of tinkering their technology into surprising feats of efficiency. But more interesting than their tech, at least to Brennarch, was their flair for unpredictability. He was one of 15 Canwyn delegates. Their species was bipedal like humans, though slightly taller on average, with elongated limbs and a fur-like covering that ranged in coloration from milky white to deep sapphire. Brennarch's coat was a warm silver, common among the Canwyn of the Fjord province on their homeworld. His orange irises and the faint swirl on his brow told others he was from a line of navigators, bearing a centuries-old lineage of star mappers, quantum lane explorers, and negotiation envoys. As the shuttle docked with the Albatross, Brennarch felt the shift in gravity. Like most starships, the Earth vessel used artificial gravitational fields that might differ from the slightly lower standard the Canwyn typically employed. He braced, flexing his three-toed feet to adjust. Once the docking clamp secured with a hiss, the shuttle door opened, and a swirl of crisp, processed air rushed inside. He straightened his posture. At 6'4" from foot to crest, Brennarch would be considered only modestly tall among the Canwyn. Among humans, he often towered head and shoulders above the average male. The corridor beyond looked metallic and dimly lit. Human engineering placed emphasis on function before aesthetic. He stepped forward, careful not to clip the door frame with the bulge of the device strapped between his upper legs. The humans at the reception corridor wore sharp, functional uniforms. Their lead officer, commander's patches on his shoulder, flashed a bright grin. "Greetings, delegates. I'm Commander Frederick Halloway," he said. "On behalf of Earth's allied systems, welcome aboard the Albatross." Commander Halloway stepped forward, offering a handshake to the lead Canwyn diplomat, Ambassador Severia. Brennarch studied the expression of his companions. They wore matching black and gold ceremonial harnesses, which served as both clothing and a place to mount personal technology. Meanwhile, the humans had multiple layers of cloth covering their torsos, arms, and legs. The disparity in dress was always a fascinating point of cultural friction. Brennarch was the third in line for introductions. He clasped Commander Halloway's hand gently, mindful that his elongated fingers and retractable claws could appear intimidating. He bowed his head in the typical Canwyn greeting. "An honor, Commander. I am Brennarch Zil." The commander's eyes flicked downward, almost imperceptibly, to the bulge between Brennarch's thighs. Over the years, Brennarch had grown somewhat used to that flick of human curiosity, but it was still jarring. He shifted slightly, clearing his throat in that soft Canwyn manner that sounded like a distant purr. He recalled advice from a xenocultural briefing. Humans often misconstrued the large harness bump on a Canwyn as an intimate anatomical feature. In truth, it was a protective shell for a specialized nerve spool that helped regulate the electromagnetic senses many Canwyn possessed. The spool also integrated with their personal tech, a multi-channel translator, sensor suite, and data storage device. But humans, being the bipeds they were with certain assumptions about body shapes, often saw the bulge and made silent or not-so-silent judgments. For a species that wore separate garments for their torsos and legs, the presence of a lump-sum harness near the groin region could be startling. Brennarch forced a polite smile. "Thank you for hosting us. Commander Holloway's gaze snapped back up to Brennarch's face. The man's cheeks pinked slightly. Our pleasure, he managed, stepping aside to let them pass. The rest of you, please, come this way. We'll guide you to your quarters. The other humans wore varied expressions, from frank curiosity to polite neutrality. The corridor bustled with footfalls, the hum of environmental systems, and the faint rumble of the engine core. Brennarch inhaled the recycled air, tinged with a metallic tang, a hallmark of human ships. The delegates soon arrived at a row of spare living quarters. Minimalist but serviceable, each had a bed with a standard mattress, a small desk, and enough open space for the tall-limbed Canwyn to maneuver comfortably. The delegates thanked the Human Welcoming Committee, who left them with a final courtesy. We have a formal reception in 4 hours. We'd be honored if you attended, Ambassador Savaria, and any others who wish to join. Brennarch dropped his travel pack onto the bed. He ran a hand along the bulge harness, feeling the hum of the nerve spool beneath. Carefully, he removed the harness for a moment, checking the calibrations. It always took a little recalibration to adapt to new gravitational settings in the background electromagnetic field. The spool was vital for long voyages. He glanced around, a swirl of excitement stirring in his chest. The Albatross was his new home, at least for the next few cycles of diplomatic negotiations. He had a strong hunch that the next few weeks would be anything but dull. Chapter 2. First Impressions. 4 hours later, Brennarch found himself stepping into a large, multi-purpose chamber. With a vaulted ceiling and overhead lighting that cast a pleasant glow, it was clearly designed for gatherings. Table after table was arranged in neat rows, while one side of the hall featured a panoramic window onto the stars. He could see Earth's sun as a glimmering speck in the distance. The smell of various foods wafted through the air, human fare primarily, with some dishes adapted for Canwyn tastes. Heated proteins, roasted vegetables, and bread-like items shaped in creative ways. The translators had recommended that the humans provide relatively mild flavors to ensure no unpleasant gastronomic surprises for the Canwyn. Brennarch approached the buffet, scanning labels that read fresh greens, sautéed mushrooms, fruit salad, chicken teriyaki, and more. He avoided the meats. While many Canwyn could digest certain forms of protein, the flavor was often too intense. Instead, he loaded up on greens, mushrooms, and a small sampling of rice pilaf. As Brennarch turned from the buffet table, balancing the plate in one hand and a cup of fruit punch in the other, he spotted a young human officer leaning against a support column. She was staring at him with wide, bright eyes. The moment she realized he'd noticed, she quickly looked away. It was always the same question on every new human's mind, wasn't it? He braced himself, took a calm breath, and decided to approach. "Hello," he said, carefully modulating his translator so it conveyed the warmth typical of the Canwyn greeting. "I am Brennarch Zil." She blinked, then half-laughed nervously. "Oh, hi, I'm Lieutenant Hannah Hargrove." Her voice trembled slightly, betraying either nerves or excitement. I was..." He offered a gentle wave of his free hand. "Yes, it's all right, you can say it." The Bulge? Her cheeks immediately flushed a deeper shade of pink. "I'm sorry," she nearly yelped in a hushed voice. I didn't mean to stare. It's just, I wasn't sure if I was seeing what I thought I was seeing." Brennarch let out a throaty hum of amusement. "Humans often come to the wrong conclusion. I can assure you it is not an intimate part. It's actually a protective housing for a neural spool. My species has an electromagnetic sense. The spool helps regulate it." Her eyes widened with fascination. "Wow, that's amazing." She paused, then offered a sheepish smile. "Forgive me for my curiosity. I heard that your species typically modifies certain body harnesses to hold devices, but I never expected, that is, it's just so pronounced." Brennarch shrugged lightly in an imitation of the human gesture he had practiced. "Yes, because we need enough space to accommodate the spool, which can shift depending on environmental EM fluctuations. The location between our legs is where the spool integrates with nerve clusters in the upper thighs. It's anatomically necessary." "Oh." She looked relieved, then intrigued. "That's actually super cool. Do you mind if I..." She caught herself, as if about to ask if she could touch it, then realized how inappropriate that might be. She made a small cough and stared down at her drink. Brennarch set down his plate and gently tapped the outer shell, which made a soft, resonant note. The harness plating was made of a specialized polymer, strong but flexible. "Touch if you wish," he said kindly. "It's quite harmless from the outside." Hannah extended a hand. She placed her fingertips gently on the shell, face reddening. It was the same kind of reaction humans might have if they accidentally brushed someone's intimate area. But Brennarch did his best to allay her embarrassment. She tapped it twice, feeling the hum. "That's so cool," she whispered. "I mean, we humans have some integrated cybernetics for certain medical purposes, but you just have it as part of your everyday biology tech synergy." Brennarch nodded. "We're used to it. Many of us find the concept of having separate undergarments or thick layered clothing strange, at least at first. Now, though, with our alliance expanding, we see more humans and one learns to adapt." Hannah seemed to relax, her earlier embarrassment ebbing. "Well, I won't lie. I hope we get to know each other better, Brennarch. You seem interesting." "I'd like that," Brennarch replied sincerely. "I'm assigned to the navigation deck for part of this mission. Perhaps we'll cross paths." They parted ways amicably, Brennarch heading to a corner seat to savor the meal, while discreetly observing the interplay of humans and Canwyn around him. This was how alliances were strengthened, not through stiff official statements alone, but through genuine curiosity, shared laughter, and bridging the gaps of difference. Just maybe, he thought, chewing through the tangy sweetness of the mushrooms, this mission will be far more fulfilling than I'd expected. Chapter 3. Cultural Exchange. Over the following week aboard the Albatross, Brennarch found himself in a swirl of diplomatic gatherings, navigational briefings, and casual encounters in the corridors. He often caught glimpses of curiosity in human eyes, some more subtle than others. While a few seemed too polite to mention anything, others would politely approach and, in hushed voices, ask about the harness, or the bulge, or the nature of Canwyn fur. Ambassador Severia, meanwhile, attended daily strategic sessions with Commander Holloway to map out the next phase of the Earth-Canwyn alliance. Both species sought to collaborate on the development of safer quantum lane routes, exchanging advanced warp technology for some of the Canwyn's SensorNet designs. What truly captivated the humans, however, was the Canwyn's electromagnetic sense. The synergy of biology and technology that manifested in the spool harness created a sense akin to a sixth sense, a direct, intuitive grasp of electromagnetic flows. For navigators like Brennarch, it was paramount to star travel, enabling real-time detection of distortions in subspace. In the quiet hours off duty, Brennarch tried to isolate a corner of the Albatross where the hum of the engines was minimal, and the data spools around him could gently calibrate to the ship's environment. On the ninth day, he found a rarely used observation deck. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a breathtaking view of the starfield beyond. He settled on a cushioned bench, closed his eyes, and let the spool hum in resonance with the cosmic backdrop. Soft footfalls echoed behind him. He opened his eyes to see Lieutenant Hannah Hargrove again. She wore casual fatigues, having just finished a shift, presumably. "Am I interrupting?" she asked quietly. Brennarch shook his head. "Not at all. I was just synchronizing with the background field." She took a seat beside him, leaving a respectful distance. "I read some files in the xenobiology database. So this spool harness, basically it interprets EM fields for you in real time?" "Correct," Brennarch replied. "Our species naturally perceives EM fluctuations. But the harness expands that sense, allowing us to detect subtle shifts in subspace, gravitational anomalies, even certain signals that starship sensors might not immediately pinpoint." Her eyes lit up. "That must make you an invaluable navigator." He let out a low purr, a typical sign of gentle agreement among the Canwyn. "It's my birthright and my vocation. My lineage belongs to a clan famous for navigation. That's part of why I was selected for this mission, to show humans the efficiency of our sense and how it might complement your technologies." Hannah's gaze floated to the stars beyond. "Sometimes I think we humans rely on brute-forcing solutions. If our sensors can't detect something, we just build bigger scanners, bigger arrays. But your approach is more elegant, biological synergy, not brute force." Brennarch dipped his head in gratitude. Humans do have a knack for surprising results, though. We respect that. Your race often accomplishes what other species consider impossible through sheer tenacity. That's a quality we, in the delegation, admire. Hannah chuckled softly. Well, thanks. We do have our moments. Sometimes we also cause trouble with that same stubbornness. A comfortable silence followed. The stars glittered, and the Albatross glided through open space with a gentle hum. The swirl of cosmic radiation beyond the hull danced as faint lines in Brennarch's mind, courtesy of the spool. Eventually she turned toward him. Do you mind if I ask something kind of personal? He quirked a brow. I don't mind, as long as it's not an insult to my father's tail or my mother's crest, he teased lightly, an old Canwyn joke referencing the comedic taboo of personal lineage details. Hannah laughed. No, it's about you and the harness. Have you ever encountered prejudice from humans or other species that make assumptions? Something deeper than a quick stare. Brennarch exhaled slowly. Yes, I have. A few times, individuals from other species have teased or made lewd comments. Some accuse us of trying to intimidate others or claim we're flaunting ourselves. But we do what we must for survival. Our spool harness is as essential to us as breathing. Hannah nodded sympathetically. I'm sorry you've had to deal with that. It's an unfortunate reality of cross-species contact. But I promise you, not all humans are like that. Most of us here on the Albatross want to understand and learn from you. Her sincerity warmed him, resonating in that intangible space between them. The translator didn't capture emotion perfectly, but Brennarch had learned to read human body language, and Hannah's posture and softened eyes said enough. Thank you, he said softly. Your kindness is appreciated. They spent another hour in easy conversation. No stares, no awkwardness, just two people from two species, bridging the gulf of difference in the quiet hush of the starlit observation deck. Chapter 4, An Unexpected Threat. Just as the Alliance talk seemed to be going smoothly, a sudden alert blared across the Albatross's intercom. Klaxons wailed, and red warning lights flashed along the corridors. All hands, battle stations, came Commander Holloway's urgent voice. We have incoming unidentified ships bearing 3D Mark 112, potentially hostile. Brennarch raced to the nearest console station, his harness spool resonating with the elevated tension. A flurry of movement rippled through the corridor as crew members took their positions. The Canwyn delegates retreated to designated safe rooms, but Brennarch knew his place wasn't cowering away. My role is navigation, he murmured, pushing past the confusion. I must get to the helm. The corridor led him to the primary bridge, a semicircular chamber lined with stations manned by frantic humans. Commander Holloway stood at the center, arms folded behind his back. His face, usually genial, was a mask of intense focus. We've got 4 unknown vessels approaching at speed, reported one lieutenant at the sensor station. They match no recognized design in our database, but they're definitely armed. Ambassador Savaria, flanked by a couple of Canwyn aides, arrived on the bridge. The tension ratcheted up another notch. No one wanted to put the ambassador in danger, but neither could they ignore her presence. Commander Holloway spoke quickly. Ambassador, I recommend you remain in the diplomatic suite. We can feed you updates from there. I won't get in the way, the ambassador replied, voice firm. And it might be beneficial for me to remain abreast of the situation. Holloway nodded grimly. Very well, but be cautious. Meanwhile, Brennarch approached the navigation console. The Albatross's chief navigator, Lieutenant Jenkins, spotted him. You're the Canwyn, right? Jenkins asked, half distracted by readouts. Think you can read anything about these vessels that our scanners can't? Brennarch didn't hesitate. He toggled a special interface linking his spool harness to the console's sensor feed. Immediately, a jolt of data coursed through him. He could feel the subtle EM signature of the approaching vessels, the subspace distortions caused by their drive systems. They had a certain erratic flare that standard human scanners might interpret only as random interference. They're shifting in and out of subspace, Brennarch reported. It's not standard warp drive, more like a transitional skip. Harder to lock onto them if they keep phasing. Attempt to isolate them on frequencies around 33 to 37 gigacycles. That's where the EM pattern is strongest. Jenkins typed rapidly. Adjusting scanners now. On the central view screen, 4 flickers appeared. The shapes of the vessels wavered as if cloaked. Then the outline solidified briefly, revealing sleek, mantis-like craft bristling with weapons pods. Holloway's jaw tightened. They're definitely armed. Comms, try hailing them. We've attempted, said the communication officer, but no response on any open channel. They're ignoring us. Ambassador Savaria moved closer to the commander. We might be dealing with the Zurl, a predatory race that occasionally emerges from uncharted regions to raid. Our archives mention that they communicate rarely and prefer intimidation or direct confrontation. Lovely, Holloway muttered. Weapons, stand by. Let's not fire first, but if they act hostile, we respond in kind. Seconds ticked by. Tension hung heavy. Brennarch felt a deep hum in his spool harness. The foreign ship's subspace transitions were intensifying. They're circling, he said. One is behind us, two on port, one on starboard. They might be trying to bracket us. Commander Holloway frowned. Jenkins, is there a path to retreat? Lieutenant Jenkins scrolled through star charts. We could attempt an FTL jump, but not safely in this region. It's a contested corridor near a gravitational anomaly. The chance of a misjump is high. Brennarch touched the spool harness, letting its tingling resonance clarify the local subspace. Through the swirl of electromagnetic signals, he sensed the corridor's pitfalls. We can do a short-range skip to Sector 7A, near that dwarf star. I sense fewer gravitational anomalies there. It's not perfect, but better than staying here. Holloway nodded. Then that's our plan. Weapons, keep a lock. The moment they fire, we return fire. Helm, prepare to accelerate. Jenkins, coordinate with a sudden jolt. The Albatross rocked hard to port, emergency lighting flaring. One of the unknown ships had opened fire, launching a barrage of searing projectiles that cut through the vacuum and slammed into the Earth vessel's shields. All decks brace, Holloway shouted. Return fire. We gave them a chance for diplomacy. Now we defend ourselves. Lances of blue-white energy erupted from the Albatross's forward cannons. They ripped across space, colliding with the attacker's partial cloak and sending dazzling sparks. Brennarch felt a wave of disorientation as the spool harness detected violent EM fluctuations. The ship's hull vibrated with the impact of more hits, and klaxons screamed a second time. Jenkins cursed. We lost partial shielding on Deck 3. They're hammering us from multiple angles. Evasive maneuvers, Holloway barked. The Albatross banked sharply, thrusters flaring. Another volley of energy beams soared past. Brennarch nearly stumbled, but braced himself against the nav console. His spool harness hummed with rapid pulses. Commander, we must jump now, even if conditions are less than ideal, Brennarch urged, feeling the swirl of subspace like a swirling tide. If we stay, they'll tear us apart. Holloway set his jaw. Lieutenant Jenkins, set coordinates for Sector 7A. Engage at my mark. A final onslaught from the alien ships battered the Albatross. Lights flickered, and the entire vessel groaned. Steady, Commander Holloway shouted. Now jump! The roar of the engine surged. A feeling of being pulled inside out overwhelmed Brennarch for a split second. Space twisted, starlight smearing. Then the Albatross emerged into relative calm. Alarms still buzzed. Smoke drifted through ventilation in corners of the bridge. But the immediate threat was gone. The unknown ships had not followed them, yet. Commander Holloway took a steadying breath. Damage report! A chorus of anxious voices filled the bridge. Deck 3 was compromised, some injuries but no fatalities reported yet. Shields were down to 40%. Engine integrity was at 70%, enough for maneuvering but perhaps not another immediate jump. As relief intermingled with dread, Brennarch's spool harness settled into a quieter hum. They'd survived the first encounter, but something told him the threat was far from over. Chapter 5. Aftermath and Resolve. The Albatross drifted near a dim, red-hued dwarf star, using the star's weaker electromagnetic field to hide from potential pursuers. Teams scrambled to repair hull breaches and restore partial shielding. Medical staff tended to the wounded in the infirmary. Ambassador Savaria convened with Commander Holloway and the top-ranking officers discussing strategy. We must relay a warning to both our governments, she insisted. If these marauders are the Zurl, we have to mobilize. They threaten our shipping lanes, our outposts, and our alliance. Holloway nodded, expression grim. Agreed, but first we need a functioning comm array. Right now, we're limping along on backups. Our main array was severely damaged. Commander, Jenkins interjected, we could do a short-range broadcast, but it won't reach Earth or the Canwyn homeworld in time. Savaria drummed her slender fingers on the table. We have to consider finding a route to the nearest Allied outpost. From there, we can transmit a stronger signal. But with them out there, Commander Holloway turned his gaze to Brennarch, who stood near the edge of the table. Brennarch, your spool harness gave us a read on them that we never would have achieved so quickly on our own. We might need that advantage again. Do you think you can help us safely navigate to the outpost while avoiding detection? Brennarch took a breath. The spool harness vibrated softly as though urging him onward. I can try. With the harness, I can sense subspace distortions that might indicate the Zil are lying in wait. Savaria bowed her head in gratitude. Your assistance could be critical. Holloway placed a hand on the table's edge. We'll set a course for Outpost Delphi. It's human-run, but open to allied species. Jenkins, coordinate with Brennarch to chart a path. As the meeting adjourned, Brennarch felt a rush of adrenaline. He was no longer a mere observer or cultural delegate. The fate of the Albatross, and possibly the entire alliance, might hinge on his ability to sense danger in the swirling complexities of subspace. Chapter 6. A Moment of Connection. Later that day, with the ship stabilized, Brennarch returned to the observation deck. He needed a moment to recover from the stress that gnawed at him. The partial flicker of lights and the faint hum of damaged systems told him the Albatross was still hurting, but functional. He pressed his forehead to the cold glass, letting the star's faint light wash across his silver fur. His spool harness trembled as it synced with the local field. A swirl of gravitational anomalies from the dwarf star pulsed like a heartbeat. He inhaled slowly, focusing on the electromagnetic symphony, letting it calm his frayed nerves. A soft voice sounded behind him. I thought I might find you here. He turned. Lieutenant Hannah Hargrove stood at the threshold, hands clasped behind her back. She'd changed into a simpler utility jumpsuit, presumably after working on repairs. Brennarch offered a tired smile. Lieutenant? She moved closer, her boots tapping lightly on the floor. I heard about the meeting. You're helping us navigate away from these Zil, or whoever they are? He nodded. Yes, I hope so. It's a heavy responsibility, but I can't turn away. She stepped up beside him, also gazing out into the star-dappled void. For a moment, the quiet was comforting. Two silhouettes against the cosmic vastness. I wanted to say thank you, she said softly, for risking yourself, for giving us a chance. He met her gaze. I'm part of this crew now, in my own way. Helping is the right thing to do. If your people survive, so do mine. Her eyes flickered with compassion. It's not just about survival, though, is it? It's about forging something bigger. An alliance that can stand against threats we don't even fully understand yet. He dipped his head. Precisely. A moment passed charged with unspoken thoughts. Humanity's presence in the cosmic stage was relatively new, compared to some ancient spacefaring powers, but their determination had propelled them forward. The Canwyn, older and more established in certain ways, still recognized they could learn from human boldness. Hannah reached out hesitantly and placed a gentle hand on Brennarch's forearm. You've been strong for us. If you ever need someone to talk to, I'm around. The warmth of her palm against his fur brought a quiet reassurance. In that small gesture, he sensed the closeness that had grown between them, cultural divides notwithstanding. Thank you, he murmured, his voice tinged with sincerity. I think that's exactly what I needed to hear right now. They stood there for a few minutes, side by side, letting the hush of space and the dim stars' glow envelop them. In that fleeting stillness, amid the chaos of uncertain threats, a bond solidified between two individuals from different worlds. Chapter 7. Charting the Path. The next day brought frenetic activity. The Albatross's engineering team stabilized the warp drive enough to attempt short FTL bursts, though at considerable risk. Brennarch, Jenkins, and a squad of human navigators pored over star charts, cross-referencing them with the live readings Brennarch gleaned from his harness spool. He ran a hand over the console, letting the harness feed him data. Subspace rifts, gravitational wells, ion storms. Each phenomenon appeared in his mind as patterns of swirling color, intangible but vivid. He described the patterns to Jenkins, who input the data into the computer to generate a route. The biggest challenge? How to avoid the Zil. With the Albatross wounded, a direct confrontation could be fatal. They needed cunning and stealth. We could attempt to pass behind the dwarf star's corona, using its radiation to mask our signature, Brennarch suggested, but it'll stress the shields. Jenkins nodded grimly. Shields are only at about 50% capacity now, but if we can hold them together for a few short bursts, we might slip by unnoticed. Commander Holloway hovered behind them, arms folded, scanning the updated road. We'll take the risk. Ambassador Severia agrees that delivering intelligence on this new threat is our priority. Brennarch's spool harness picked up a faint ripple. He tensed, eyes widening. Wait, I sense something, another subspace surge. They could be searching for us. Jenkins quickly cross-checked the sensors. I'm seeing trace energy spikes, consistent with that phasing drive we saw. They might be scanning the region. Holloway cursed under his breath. We have to move or they'll find us. The plan solidified quickly. The Albatross would execute a series of short, carefully calculated microjumps, hugging the dwarf star's outer corona. With luck, the star's radiation would obscure the ship from the Zil's sensors. Then, with a final jump, they'd break into open space en route to Outpost Delphi. Everyone to your stations, the commander ordered. We're doing this now. Chapter 8. Through the Fire. The Albatross lurched into motion. The dwarf star's corona glowed ominously through the viewport, a roiling sea of superheated plasma. The ship's hull rattled as temperatures soared. Force fields crackled under the strain of intense radiation. Brennarch remained at the nav console, harness spool thrumming. He guided Jenkins with quick updates. A bit more to starboard. Watch for that coronal mass ejection. Yes, right there. Jenkins' fingers flew across the controls. Adjusting course. Helm, reduce speed by 15%. We don't want to overtake that ejection wave. Commander Holloway's voice resonated across the bridge. Shields at 35%. Hold steady. Outside, plumes of solar flame licked across the vacuum, painting the blackness with violent splashes of orange and gold. The ship's structural integrity groaned, but held. Brennarch felt the spool harness shake, battered by the star's intense EM flux. We're nearing the final micro-jump, Jenkins called, sweat beading on his brow. Coordinates locked. Commander Holloway steeled himself. Initiate jump in 5, 4, 3. Suddenly, the entire vessel shuddered, a fresh wave of klaxons. Incoming fire, the weapons officer shouted. One Zil vessel just decloaked above us, launching a projectile. Brennarch's heart sank. The star's corona parted briefly, revealing the mantis-like shape. They'd been found. Shields at 20%. Commander, if that second volley hits, started Jenkins, voice filled with alarm. Holloway barked, we jump now! The warp engines roared, pushing the Albatross into subspace. For a moment, reality blurred into swirling color. The star's corona and the Zil vessel vanished in a kaleidoscope flash. Then they slammed back into normal space. Everyone gasped, some crew lurching forward against the consoles. Sparks flew from a scorched panel. We're clear, Jenkins panted. No sign of pursuit, but that was incredibly close. Commander Holloway surveyed the battered bridge. Status? A flurry of reports came in, minimal hull breach on Deck 4, shield generator severely damaged, some crew injuries, but no fatalities. The jump drive was now practically spent. They had enough for only basic in-system travel until major repairs could be done. We're still on course for Outpost Delphi, Jenkins said. ETA is 6 standard days at sublight speeds, though we can push to 3 days if we coax the engines carefully. Holloway gave a tight nod. Make it happen. Let's hope the Zil don't track us the entire way. Brennarch sagged in relief, letting his spool harness go dormant for a moment. They'd escaped barely, but the cost had been high. Now it was a race against time to reach Delphi and warn the galaxy of what lurked in the darkness. Chapter 9. Recover and Reassess. The Albatross limped through interstellar space, battered but not broken. Over the next few days, repairs commenced around the clock. Though the warp drive remained offline, the sublight engines and life support systems were steadily improved. Morale on board was a mixture of grim determination and cautious optimism. Crew members began to realize just how crucial Brennarch and the other Canwyn had been in their escape. Without their advanced EM sense synergy, the humans might never have evaded the Zil in time. This respect crystallized in daily interactions. as some overcame the many lingering discomfort about the bulge harness. They now saw it for what it was, a life-saving advantage, not a comedic anomaly. During this time, Brennarch joined engineering teams, offering advice on calibrating sensor arrays. His spool harness allowed him to detect subtle misalignments in the ship's shielding frequencies, and with Lieutenant Hargrove's help, they fine-tuned the system. While working side by side, they exchanged jokes, personal stories, and laments about the unpredictability of space travel. "What do you miss most about your homeworld?" Hannah asked one evening as they sat on a catwalk overlooking a newly repaired plasma conduit. Brennarch took a moment to consider. "The reefs," he said softly. "On the southwestern coast of my continent, there are aquatic reefs that glow at night. The luminescence interacts with the electromagnetic fields generated by local fauna. It's beautiful," she smiled wistfully. "Sounds like Earth's coral reefs, except way more exotic. I've never been diving in Earth's oceans, but it's on my bucket list." Brennarch's lips curled slightly in amusement. "You should go. The wonder of seeing your planet's natural beauties might remind you why alliances like this are worth fighting for." She nodded, quietly contemplating. "You're right." Throughout the ship, humans and Canwyn worked side by side, forging a bond through necessity and respect. Even the ambassador and the commander, who started off with polite but guarded diplomacy, began to display genuine trust. Rumors swirled of an impending counteroffensive once they reached Outpost Delphi. Human ships, combined with Canwyn squadrons, would not let the Zurl menace roam free. For now, though, the Albatross was alone. Everyone knew that if the Zurl found them again, it might be their end. Chapter 10. On the edge of Fear Day 3 of the journey to Outpost Delphi. The crew's exhaustion ran deep, but they pressed onward, with Brennarch continually scanning the subspace environment. Each day, the spool harness detected faint fluctuations that might hint at a distant pursuer, but no definitive sign of the Zurl reappearing. Yet, Commander Holloway implemented regular drills, ensuring the crew stayed alert. The tension was palpable. The corridors felt quieter than usual, with hushed conversations and anxious glances. Everyone knew what was at stake. Late into the evening cycle, Brennarch sat alone in his quarters. A single overhead light illuminated the small space. He'd removed his spool harness for a brief respite, letting his nerves rest from the constant data feed. He found himself thinking about Hannah Hargrove. Her curiosity, once fixated on the bulge harness, had transformed into genuine admiration. They'd become friends, perhaps more than friends, if they ever had the time or safety to explore such feelings. The thought gave him a gentle warmth, cutting through the fear that gnawed at him. A soft chime rang at his door. "Come in," he called. Hannah stepped inside, looking tired but determined. "I know it's late, but we got an alert from the secondary scanners. There's an odd reading off our starboard side, about 5 million kilometers out. We're not sure if it's a glitch, but Commander Holloway wants you to take a look." Brennarch quickly slid the spool harness back on, letting it click into place. The device settled against his upper legs, humming as it recognized his biosignature. "Let's go." They headed to a smaller auxiliary control room. Data streams flickered on an array of monitors. Lieutenant Jenkins was there, brow furrowed. "Glad you're here," he said, motioning them over. He pointed to a waveform on the display. "It's faint, but it looks like a subspace ripple. Could be natural background noise. Or it could be a cloaked vessel." Brennarch rested a palm on the console, letting the spool harness interface. Immediately, a swirl of impressions flooded him. A distant spike, maybe like the footprints of the Zurl's phasing drive, but not nearly as strong as before. It could be a scout or even a derelict vessel. He concentrated, focusing on the fluctuations, trying to glean more. "It feels inconsistent," he said finally. "It's not stable enough to be the phasing drive, but it's definitely not random." Jenkins exhaled sharply. "So it might be them, damaged or using partial cloak." Brennarch's ears flattened slightly, a sign of worry. "Possibly. We should stay on guard. I can't confirm it's the Zurl, but we can't dismiss the possibility." Hannah looked between the two. "Commander Holloway will want to run silent or try another short jump if there's a risk." "Short jump is out of the question," Jenkins reminded them. "The warp drive is still offline from the last fiasco. We're stuck at sublight until we reach Delphi." A hush fell. The tension pressed in on all sides. If there was a Zural ship lurking out there, the Albatross could be in grave danger. Finally, Hannah swallowed. We'd better inform the commander. Brennarch nodded, stepping away from the console. His spool harness continued to hum with the faint echo of whatever was out there. He prayed silently that it wasn't another ambush. Chapter 11. Stealth and Revelation. Commander Holloway decided on a stealth approach. We'll power down non-essential systems, reduce our EM signature, and proceed at minimal speed, he announced over ship-wide comms. All crew, assume quiet running protocols. Lighting dimmed throughout the Albatross. The hum of systems quieted. Even the temperature controls were reduced to conserve energy and mask the vessel's presence. A hush of expectancy gripped everyone. 2 days remained until they would reach Outpost Delphi at this snail's pace. The question loomed, could they avoid detection that long? Brennarch spent most of his time in the auxiliary control room, monitoring the subspace ripple. He felt its presence like a phantom on the edge of his senses. If the anomaly began closing in, they'd know. Jenkins and Hannah took shifts with him, scanning, cross-checking data, and occasionally exchanging hopeful glances that it was just a glitch. Then halfway through the second day, a sudden spike flared on the monitors. The spool harness vibrated strongly. "They're moving," Brennarch hissed, the fur on his neck bristling. "Coming toward us. Definitely a ship of some sort." Jenkins' face paled. "I can't get a clear reading of how many. Could be one, could be more. They're piggybacking off the subspace wakes somehow." Commander Holloway's voice came through a local console. "We see it, Lieutenant." "Options?" Silence draped the control room. No warp drive, limited weapons, battered shields. The entire crew braced for the worst. Suddenly, a beep at the comm station. A signal, low frequency, heavily modulated. Jenkins put it on speaker. A garbled voice, broken but discernible, echoed, "Human vessel, do not fear. We, no harm, need assistance." Brennarch and Hannah exchanged wide-eyed looks. Jenkins quickly tried to stabilize the signal. "They're sending an SOS?" The voice repeated in clearer tones. "We come in peace. We are survivors. Need aid. Engines failing." Commander Holloway, listening from the bridge, quickly instructed, "Open a channel. Let's see who we're dealing with." Jenkins complied. "Unknown vessel, this is Earth Defense Vessel Albatross. Identify yourselves." A crackle, then, "We, Taralka, attacked by raiders, in distress." Brennarch felt relief washing over him. This was not the Zural. Taralka were a small, nomadic species known for trading across multiple sectors. They seldom carried heavy armaments. Commander Holloway gave the order to maintain caution, but approach. "We'll investigate. If they truly need help, we can't just leave them." 20 minutes later, a visual feed appeared on the screen. A battered, wedge-shaped craft drifted aimlessly. The hull was pockmarked with blast scars, bits of debris swirling around it. A Taralka captain, a slender, scaled being with luminous eyes, appeared on the communication interface. "Human vessel, please. Our life support is failing. We have wounded. Our ship's drive core is destroyed. We can't jump." Holloway stood on the bridge, expression torn between compassion and prudence. "We'll assist if we can. Are you alone?" The Taralka nodded weakly. "Yes, our convoy was destroyed by the Zural. They came out of nowhere. We managed to flee, but were crippled." The mention of Zural confirmed the worst. Holloway glanced at Brennarch via the feed. "Prepare to take them aboard, but we do it carefully. Security, stand by." In short order, the Albatross extended docking clamps, pulling the Taralka craft into a maintenance bay. Medical teams rushed in with breath masks and portable stretchers. Brennarch and Hannah accompanied them, spool harness at the ready, scanning for any sign of deception. But it seemed genuine. The Taralka had been ravaged by the same marauders. The surviving crew was grateful, though many were severely injured. As the Taralka captain was led to the infirmary, he clasped Commander Holloway's hand. "Bless you, humans. And you, Canwyn," he added, noticing Brennarch's presence. "We fear the Zural are growing bolder. You must warn your people." "We intend to," Holloway said solemnly. "We're en route to Outpost Delphi." The Taralka's luminous eyes flared with alarm. "Hurry! The Zural are establishing forward bases along key trade routes. The entire sector is in peril." A hush fell on the group. They realized that while they had survived the initial ambush, a larger threat loomed, not just for the Albatross, but for the entire region of space. Chapter 12. Hope at Delphi. The Albatross continued its slow journey, now carrying a handful of Turalka refugees. Every deck felt the weight of the mission. At last, on the 7th day after their harrowing escape, the ship's external sensors picked up the faint signals of Outpost Delphi, a modular station orbiting a gas giant. The entire crew seemed to exhale as one in relief. Outpost Delphi wasn't huge, but it boasted robust communications arrays and a modest defense fleet. As the battered Albatross approached, radio chatter crackled. "This is Outpost Delphi Control. We see you, Albatross. You look like hell. Stand by for docking instructions." Commander Holloway and Ambassador Savaria wasted no time. The moment they docked, they requested an emergency council with the station's leadership and any allied captains present. Brennarch, Hannah, Jenkins, and the Turalka captain accompanied them, presenting the horrifying account of their encounters with the Zuril. Word spread quickly. Within hours, the station's central forum was abuzz with alien envoys, human officers, and station administrators, all clamoring for information. Brennarch stood at Savaria's side, spool harness reined in to avoid the chaotic swirl of electromagnetic chatter from so many devices. "This is not an isolated incident," Savaria said, addressing the gathered crowd. "The Zuril are staging systematic raids. They possess advanced phasing drives that make them difficult to track." A murmur of alarm rippled through the assembly. The Turalka captain confirmed the same pattern of attacks in other systems. Station logs revealed missing freighters, lost ships, and sporadic SOS signals. Commander Holloway stepped up. "We request immediate reinforcement from Earth Central Command and the Canwyn High Council. The Albatross is heavily damaged, but we will remain at Outpost Delphi to assist in coordinating defensive measures." Station Commander LaForge, a seasoned human officer, nodded firmly. "We can broadcast a wideband message from here. Our array is powerful enough to reach Earth and Canwyn territory. We'll also gather any local ships willing to stand against these raiders." People from various species exchanged determined looks. The seeds of a united front were being planted. Brennarch felt a certain surge of hope. Maybe, just maybe, the combined might of humans, Canwyn, Turalka, and others could repel the Zuril threat before it spread further. Chapter 13, the HFY moment. News traveled fast. Within days, the first wave of reinforcements arrived, a motley fleet of human frigates and corvettes, along with a few Canwyn cruisers. The Turalka also sent a small scouting vessel. Outpost Delphi transformed into a strategic nerve center. Plans formed for reconnaissance missions, potential ambush tactics against the Zuril, and, most importantly, the protection of civilian shipping lanes. Commander Holloway, fully recovered from the stress of the near disaster, found renewed purpose. "We humans have a saying," right? He addressed the assembled crews. "When the going gets tough, we don't back down. We figure out a way." That spirit, a hallmark of HFY narratives, shone through in every volunteer who stepped forward. Humanity's grit and willingness to push boundaries resonated with the other species. The Canwyn offered specialized sensor technology, while the Turalka contributed knowledge of hidden trade routes. Brennarch found himself at the center of these efforts, training human navigators to use harmonic scanning methods that mimicked his spool harness's approach. He taught them how to read subtle distortions in subspace, a skill that might give them an edge. A week later, an Allied fleet of 15 vessels, big and small, prepared for an operation codenamed Shield of Delphi. Their goal? Intercept a suspected Zuril raiding party near a remote planet called Zelion, rumored to be a staging ground. On the eve of departure, Brennarch and Hannah found a quiet balcony on Outpost Delphi, overlooking the swirling, multicolored clouds of the gas giant below. She smiled up at him. "Hard to believe how far we've come in just a few weeks. When you first boarded the Albatross, all I could think about was how weird your harness bulge looked." He let out a low purr of amusement. "And now you see it as—" She reached out, gently tapping the harness with a knuckle. "A symbol of hope and survival, I guess. Something that helps save us all." Brennarch felt a warmth flood through him. "I'm glad it could break down barriers of misunderstanding," he said softly. "We all have differences, but it's what we do with them that defines us." She nodded, her gaze lingering on his. In that suspended moment, War preparations and looming danger receded, leaving behind a shared promise of friendship and something deeper. He carefully slipped an arm around her shoulders, both a human gesture and a new expression for a Canwyn. She leaned into him with a gentle sigh. "We'll get through this," she whispered. "Together." Chapter 14, Clash of Stars, Finale. 2 days later, the Allied fleet translated into the Zelian system, sublight engines flaring. Intelligence indicated the Ziril had established a hidden outpost on the system's outermost planet, a frozen orb with a thin atmosphere. The plan was to draw the raiders out by feigning a lone freighter crossing the system. Brennarch and Hannah stood on the bridge of the Albatross, now partially repaired and rearmed. The spool harness hummed at full capacity, scanning for subspace anomalies. The Allied ships fanned out in a wide net, weapons armed and ready. Minutes ticked by. Then came the sign, a flicker on subspace sensors. Brennarch snapped his head up. "They're here." A cluster of Ziril vessels emerged like wraiths, phasing into normal space. The Allied net closed swiftly. Laser batteries, plasma cannons, and railguns lit up the darkness in a thunderous assault. The Ziril responded with a barrage of their own. Chaos ensued. Explosions blossomed in the void. One human corvette took heavy damage, careening into a spiral. A Canwyn cruiser launched coordinated bursts of EM pulses, partially disrupting the Ziril's cloaking. The Taralka scout darted in, providing real-time targeting data. On the Albatross, Commander Holloway gripped the helm. "Focus fire on their lead ship." Brennarch sensed a surge in subspace. "Commander, they're trying to warp out. Don't let them slip away, or they'll return with reinforcements." "Target their engines now," Holloway bellowed. Under a concentrated bombardment, the Ziril's lead vessel shuddered, erupting in a chain of secondary blasts. The commander let out a triumphant shout, but the fight was far from over. More Ziril ships weaved in and out of cloak, ripping into Allied lines. Nearby, a pair of human frigates locked onto a Ziril raider, pounding it until it imploded. Another Ziril corvette blindsided a Canwyn cruiser, damaging its drive. Over open comms, the cruiser's captain declared they'd hold the line. Brennarch's spool harness flared with urgent energy. Multiple subspace distortions forming. They might be trying to retreat or bring reinforcements. We must jam them. "We're on it!" Jenkins roared from the weapons console. He triggered a specialized EM pulse that the Canwyn had developed. Energy rippled across the battlefield, interfering with the Ziril's phasing drives. Some flickered as cloaks destabilized. Now fully exposed, the Ziril ships were vulnerable. The Allied fleet redoubled their attack, blasting hulls and forcing the raiders to scramble. One by one, the Ziril ships were either disabled or destroyed, each explosion a testament to the combined might of species once divided by distance and culture. The last Ziril vessel, battered and belching plasma, attempted a desperate breakaway. Commander Holloway seized the opportunity. "Finish them." A final decisive barrage from the Albatross struck the Ziril craft's core, incinerating it in a bright flash. Silence fell over the comm channels as debris drifted listlessly. Cheers and relieved cries erupted across the Allied vessels. They had done the impossible, driven off or destroyed the Ziril raiders in a head-on confrontation. This was a resounding demonstration that humanity, bolstered by the ingenuity of friends like the Canwyn and Taralka, could stand up to even the most fearsome threats. On the bridge, Commander Holloway sank into his chair, an exhausted but victorious grin on his face. Ambassador Savaria dabbed away tears of relief. Hannah turned to Brennarch, eyes shining. "We did it," she whispered. He leaned against the console, spool harness quieting to a gentle hum. "Yes, and this is only the beginning of our alliance." Epilogue: The engagement at Zelian became a galvanizing moment for interstellar cooperation. As news spread, more species rallied to resist the Ziril. Diplomatic channels buzzed with strategies to protect frontier worlds, coordinate patrols, and share technology. For Brennarch, his place was clear. He was no longer just a delegate. He was a bridge between species, using his spool harness to guide Allied fleets through subspace hazards and outmaneuver lurking threats. The once curious stares aimed at the bulge between his legs had shifted into respect, admiration, and genuine friendship. When the Albatross eventually returned to Earth for further repairs and a hero's welcome, a small group of Canwyn delegates, including Brennarch, Brennarch disembarked onto human soil. Cheers erupted. Banners in multiple languages celebrated their victory. Turalka representatives, sporting newly crafted alliances with Earth, greeted them with bright smiles. Standing on the tarmac, Hannah Hargrove pulled Brennarch aside. The cacophony of the celebration swirled around them. Without speaking, she reached up and wrapped her arms around his tall frame, pressing her cheek to his chest. He returned the embrace, spool harness gently humming. "What will you do now?" she asked softly. He gazed around at the bustling starport. "Continue my work, help forge stronger ties between our species. We still have a long road ahead, ensuring the Zurl threat is quelled and our borders remain secure." She nodded, eyes brimming with emotion. "Just promise you'll come back and visit. This time maybe I can show you some of Earth's coral reefs so you can see we have beauty here too." He smiled warmly, revealing a hint of fang. "I'd like that very much." They stood for a moment, letting the swirl of celebration pass by. For all their differences, physiological, cultural, and historical, they had found in each other and in their alliance a shared resolve. Humanity's spirit, tempered by the wisdom and senses of other species, became a beacon of hope in a galaxy growing ever more perilous. In the end, it wasn't just about advanced harnesses or bulges or stairs. It was about transcending the superficial and forging bonds that could reshape the cosmos. And so the story of the Albatross, Brennarch Zil, and Lieutenant Hannah Hargrove became one that spread across worlds. A tale that proved that sometimes curiosity and cooperation, no matter how awkwardly they might begin, could blossom into triumph for everyone under the stars.